Hello and welcome. I am Gauhar Raza and you are watching Eureka. When India got its freedom, one of the major concerns of the political leadership and scientific leadership was to achieve food security. 60s and 70s especially were amazing periods when India achieved food security. It was the period of Green Revolution. Green Revolution that became the basis for economy of the country. Some people may argue that the whole scientific, technological and industrial infrastructure was built at a rapid pace because we achieved food security. When you look at the Green Revolution, then two names stand out completely from a galaxy of brilliant scientists. Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, who has already appeared on our show. And today we have Dr. Chopra. Dr. Chopra, I'm very thankful that you gave time to us, Rajya Sabha channel, as well as Eureka.
It's a pleasure.
You have become a household name in the country. Did you ever think as a child that you are going to become a household name?
Not at all. I, as a child, wouldn't have thought that I would take science as a profession. Leave short of the fact of becoming what you call, so generously called, a household name.
You were born in Rawalpindi, and your father was a teacher and principal of a school, and you were admitted suddenly to 4th standard. You didn't pass first, second, third. Was it a shock for you that now you have to appear and what was the reason? Why were you admitted? Because your education was going on anyway.
Yes, first I was born, I am told, at a place called Adwal, not in Rawalpindi, Adwal.
Adwal.
This was, I am told, district Cuttack. Attak, district Attak.
Okay.
Now in Pakistan. My father was the headmaster of the school, and therefore I had the luxury of choosing what I wanted to do. He was an educationist, he was very liberal in letting me pursue education as I wanted to. And since I had that unusual opportunity, I exercised it. So I used to choose a teacher that I liked and study with him.
And you chose two teachers who influenced your life. Do you remember them?
Yes, I remember them. In fact, the first one was one Mr. Muhammad Ali. He was a tall gentleman. He used to come from some adjoining village to where the school was in Silamali, a place very close to Sargodha. And somehow I liked him. So I said, I want to study with Muhammad Ali ji. And my father said, it's all right. So Mr. Muhammad Ali and I, we were great friends. And I thought he was a tremendous teacher, a motivating factor. And I continued studying with him. It went on like that till I came to a stage where there was another teacher who used to call him Shahji. Shahji came to my father and he said that you should get Veer admitted in a regular class. And my father asked him, I still remember I was with him when Shahji came, is he not studying properly? He said, no, he's doing fine. But I want to take him for the competitive scholarship examination, and that can be done only if he's a regular student, admitted student. So my father said, ask him if he would like to do that, and if he does that, it's okay. And Shahji said, मेरे साथ पढ़ोगे? My major reason for choosing at that time was the school had two campuses. One which was a little farther away, one which was closest to my room, to my house. And this particular campus where only two classes were there, third and fourth, had a campus where there were a lot of orange trees. So I was actually attracted by those orange trees so that I can, with Shahji's permission, pluck a santra on my own. So I said, all right. And that's how I got admitted to the school.
But Shahji also took you to the competitive exam where you got 4 rupees scholarship, 4 rupees per month scholarship. This was something great.
At that time, 4 rupees mattered little to me. I didn't know what their value was. I only later on realized how important it was. But it was because of Shahji's friendship that I said, all right. He said that I will have to take you to Sargodha, where there is this competitive examination. He gave me the lowdown on how it will be. And I said, जैसे आप कहेंगे मैं करूँगा. So we went to Sargodha. He took me to Sargodha.
You passed the exam and it was the whole village celebrated it. And
yes,
you remember that.
It was in stages. There were people who were, after the first one, they were removed and only some were taken in and so on. Ultimately, I got the scholarship. And in the evening when we came back from Sargodha, obviously, I don't know how he got the news. At that time, there were no mobile phones. Even the phone was a rarity and so on. But people knew when I realized. And Shahji, I still remember, took me on his shoulder and walked from the railway station to my house, which was about a furlong distance. And there was a huge celebration with patakas and so on. And I felt very, very good about it.
Those were the teachers who encouraged
those were the teachers.
The younger ones, and he was not related to you. He was just a teacher in the school.
He was a teacher in the school.
And that has left a very deep imprint on your memory. You wanted now to do agricultural sciences. And for that, you went abroad as well. Why did you come back to India?
I started working at the IARI. I was well into research before I went for a PhD in UK. But I was quite clear in my mind that I want to work in my own country and work on things that I like. Even for my PhD, I took my own problem to UK. And I was quite clear that I wanted to work only in India.
You started working on wheat.
Yeah.
After coming back to India.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for working on wheat and the problems that wheat crops were facing? Especially the rust.
That's an interesting question. In that time, in the 60s, early 60s, jobs were not very easy to get by. And when I got a job and I wanted to work in a particular area, and there was no job in that area. And therefore, I was recruited as a research assistant and placed in a section where the work was important, but it didn't interest me. And it was Dr. Swaminathan, with whom I had worked as a student, and he must have seen something in me, because of which he wanted me back into his group of researchers. And he got me transferred from where I was placed as a research assistant to his group as a research assistant to work on the kind of things that he was involved in at that time. And it's a long story, but the short point of it was that he left the choice to me on what I wanted to work on.
Within the broad area.
Within the broad area.
Right.
Because the job was in mutagenesis. It was a UNDP project of some kind in which there was this job. And one had to work on radiation biology, and within the ambit of the program that Dr. Swaminathan had at that time. And he wanted me to choose what I wanted to work on. And I said, all right, I will work on wheat and induce.
And then you never looked back.
I never looked back.
You got interested into wheat deeply,
yeah,
because that would provide food security to the country as well as to the farmers, individual farmers.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I was excited by the science part of it. And since at that particular point of time, the direction that Dr. Swaminathan wanted to give to his program was that it should be relevant to science and it should be relevant to society. And that was an area where there was science opportunity for me to advance academically.
Biotechnology at that time was a nascent, very, very nascent discipline which was coming up. When did you get interested into biotechnology?
Well, you know, at that time, the group was radiation biology, as we used to call it. And as one moved along, mutagenesis was an important area of work because thereby you could produce changes, genetic changes, which you ultimately could modify into products which are needed for a particular purpose.
When did you realize that it is extremely important to get into this area if you have to produce high-yielding and resistant varieties?
Well, as I told you, we were working in a group which was called mutagenesis group. Mutagenesis means that you use various kinds of procedures and techniques to produce genetic changes, heritable changes. And we were interested in producing heritable changes which have a relevance to societal need. So one wanted to change, for example, a wheat which was awnless, which didn't have the beard, to a Gauhar Raza looking wheat which had a beard, because bearding was an important issue. And therefore, one chose areas of work in which one could produce heritable changes which will improve the acceptability of the crop to the farmer.
And how was it difficult to look at Indian scenario? Because everywhere the temperature, humidity, soil conditions, they change.
Yeah.
So one variety cannot cater to the national need.
Right.
So IARI at that time started looking at Indian scenario and produce varieties which could be habitable in various conditions. When did you start on that project?
Well, you know, there was this wheat breeding program at the IARI which looked at producing varieties suitable for different agroclimatic conditions, different specific needs for which the crop needed to be raised. And the mutagenesis group used the science to either improve characteristics in those wheats which were produced by the wheat breeding group, or to rectify some of the shortcomings that those varieties had by mutagenesis to produce an improved genotype.
And you think that science, which was done at that time, ultimately resulted into food security of the country?
Quite right, quite right.
If we hadn't done that science, we wouldn't have been where we are.
Absolutely.
I have to take a break. Don't go anywhere. The discussion will continue. Welcome back. Dr. Chopra, we were discussing that how food security was achieved. But you have criticized in one of your articles this food security. You say that for India today we are food secured country. But the way the population is increasing, the demand is increasing, it still remains highly fragile. So as a scientist, would you argue that more research, more science, more funds, more probably institutions should be established in the country, and we should not be complacent?
Well, agriculture being the kind of enterprise it is highly location specific. It is prone to derailment by various factors, both climatic and business-driven preferences. And therefore, complacence in agriculture is a very major threat which must be avoided at all costs. Because we do need not only more food, we now need food which is customized for many different uses for which we are using food which we were not using before. And therefore, it is important that one has focused research which looks at productivity increases on one hand and the diverse uses to which a produce is ultimately to end up for the consumer to choose as a product of his or her choice.
One of the threats that you have been working on has been the rust.
Yes.
That is your mainstay for which you have got all kinds of award throughout the world. The threat that is very recent, some scientists are pointing out, which begins from northern part of Africa and is moving towards tropical region of this side. It was identified in Iran. Do you think India is under threat by that rust in the country, and we should be guarding?
Just as you change a crop variety, the rust is also an organism. It also changes. It also wants to survive. And therefore, when
nature retaliates.
Nature retaliates. And
against your intervention.
Therefore, new strains of rust will come just as you produce new varieties of wheat. This particular rust that you are talking about, originating in Africa, moving across the wheat-growing regions of the world, and ultimately reaching India, was a potential threat. But focused research has made sure that one has been able to identify resistance against this particular rust, which can be incorporated into our wheats, so that our wheats are as safe as they were from previous rust which invaded wheats.
Are you happy with the kind of investment that we are making in agriculture sector, especially research?
Well, money is something which is never enough. And we must realize that while money is important, our choices of using that money also have to be geared to what is available and what needs to be done. For sure, more money is needed, but equally important will be deep thought over where we want to use that money and to ensure that the rupee spent is used for getting the maximum bang for what is called the buck.
With your long experience, how would you explain that? Because then that money spent has to be chosen, and what will be your choices?
The choice would obviously be that one prioritizes. It's like running a household. It's like running a household.
So some money for reacting to immediate threats and some money for long-term
Long-term
science.
goals. Quite right.
You cannot be complacent on any of the two fronts.
Quite right.
Would you also argue that because India is such a large country with varied climatic conditions, that we need more and more institutions which cater to local conditions, and we don't have sufficient of them, or we have sufficient number of institutions?
Well, there will be there certainly is need for institutions which can identify problems and provide inputs into the prioritization process. But more institutions is not the only answer to our problems. In fact, science, like anything else, also needs family planning. And I think it's important that we rationalize the need for more institutions and the need for viable institutions. It's not necessary that the research for a particular need is done at a place where that need is. If that had been the case, the international research institutions shouldn't have been relevant at all. And you know the role that international institutions have played even in the area of agriculture. I believe what we need to do is to take a good hard look at what our institutional structure is currently and what we need to do in the light of how science has developed. Because the new science also gives us lots of opportunities, which ensures that we don't really need to set up an institution for every little thing.
Absolutely. You have been given the highest award that any agricultural scientist could aspire for. It is Nobel Prize in Agriculture, Borlaug Award. Which award do you cherish most and remember most? Which gave you the moment of Eureka? That I have the moment of Eureka and this is the award.
Well, I mean, the awards have come as a bonus to me. My biggest award has been the satisfaction which I derived from what I was doing. Since you asked me to give the value judgment on various awards, my most valued award was not one of the ones that you have recounted. It was recognition for some work which I had done. And it's a long story, but I will cut it short. In the late 50s, there was a program on All India Radio called Zakir Hussain Memorial Lecture. And Dr. Swaminathan was to give this Zakir Hussain Memorial Lecture. At that time, one of my usual things of trying to do something new was to do human cytogenetics.
Mm-hmm.
That was because you know, I had a friend in the medical profession, and he was a pediatrician in Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital. And he used to tell me about a whole lot of people who come to him with their children who are afflicted with one of the genetically controlled diseases or abnormalities. And I realized that part of this was because of chromosomal origin. Down syndrome, for example.
Right.
3 doses of chromosome 21. And we were a plant-based research organization. But I one day went to Dr. Swaminathan and I said that because of this reason, we should also do human cytogenetics. And he said it's a good idea. But to cut a long story short, I cooked up a laboratory for preparing human chromosome preparations from peripheral blood leukocytes. And at that time, I prepared chromosomes, human chromosomes slide on the blood of my own. And I showed, this was one day before Dr. Swaminathan was to give his Zakir Memorial Lecture. And I showed him the slide, showed him the preparation, and he was excited. And he said, "Can you prepare a slide for this?" I said, "All right, we'll do that." At that time, there were not many facilities in IARI. We used to do photography for slides at night because, then you're not bothered with light creeping in and so on. And I prepared the slide. And when he gave before his lecture in the All India Radio, he also gave a lecture in the IARI as a kind of a rehearsal. And I don't know how he weaved this slide into his preparation, into his lecture. And he said that the chromosomes that you see on the screen are chromosomes of Chopra. And as you can see, he said jokingly, as you can see, there is this Y chromosome, and he's a male, this is a Y chromosome. That I still consider my biggest award.
Lovely. This is a story of science being done cross-discipline, two very different disciplines coming together to use a technique. Would you like to sign off by giving a message to younger generation?
Well, my appeal to younger generation would be choose to do what excites you to do and do it for the fun of it, not worrying about what will give it back to you.
Choose what excites you. Choose whatever excites you and work for it, then success will come on your way. Write to us at Eureka rstv@gmail.com and you will get an answer to your question. You can also watch this program on YouTube as well as on CSIR Niskaya Tube. Thank you very much for giving us so much of time.